Have you ever just been stopped in your tracks by a wave of feeling? A memory so vivid it's almost like you can touch it, all triggered by something as simple as a song or a smell or an old photo? Well, that powerful, really complex emotion is nostalgia. And in this explainer, we're going to unpack the incredible science behind this bittersweet journey into our own past. Oh, we've all been there, right? You're driving, a song from when you were a teenager comes on the radio, and boom. Suddenly, you are not in your car anymore. You're back at a high school dance, or maybe a summer bonfire, or just hanging out with old friends. It really does feel like a time machine for your mind. But what is actually happening inside our brains to create this powerful effect? I mean, how does one little sensory cue unlock such a rich emotional world? To get it, we really have to start with the word itself. The term nostalgia was actually put together back in the 17th century from two Greek words, nostos, which means return home, and algos, which means pain. And that origin just perfectly captures the emotion's core identity. It's a bittersweet mix. It's the sweetness of remembering a cherished time, but it's also got this little tinge of pain or sadness knowing that time is gone for good. It's like a return home to a place in our memory that we can visit, but, never truly live in again.
Now, it's super important to be clear about what nostalgia isn't. It gets mixed up with homesickness all the time, but homesickness is this really distressing feeling about a place you're away from. Nostalgia, on the other hand, is usually a pretty pleasant feeling about a time that's passed. It's also different from just plain reminiscence. Reminiscence is just, recalling the past. It's like pulling up a file. But nostalgia, that's when we feel the past. You might reminisce, and that leads to nostalgia, but nostalgia is the real emotional destination.
Okay, so here is our roadmap for this journey. We've kind of touched on that bittersweet feeling. Next up, we're going to look at nostalgia's surprising history, how it went from being a diagnosed sickness to a source of strength. Then we'll do a deep dive inside the nostalgic brain to see what's firing up. After that, we'll explore how nostalgia acts as this amazing psychological resource. And finally, we'll think about the past's proper place in our lives today.
So let's kick things off with a chapter of nostalgia story that I promise you, most people have no idea about. Before it was this cozy feeling we see in movies and music, nostalgia was considered a dangerous, legitimate illness. Just look at this timeline. It shows a complete, stunning reversal. For centuries, nostalgia was a malady, a disease of both the mind and the body. When a Swiss medical student coined the term back in 1688, he wasn't describing some fleeting feeling. No. He was diagnosing soldiers who had fevers, anxiety, even heart palpitations. Doctors actually treated it with stuff like leeches and exile. The idea that this very same feeling could be a source of strength is incredibly recent. And this wild shift from sickness to resource is something that modern science has finally helped us understand. So how in the world did we go from a disease to a resource? Well, the answer lies in modern neuroscience. We can literally see what's happening inside the brain when we feel nostalgic. And it turns out it's a super complex and coordinated event that involves 4 key components, and we are going to walk through them right now. First up, self-reflection. Because at its very core, nostalgia is a story, and you are the main character.
When we feel nostalgic, we see this surge of activity in brain regions like the medial prefrontal cortex. You can think of these areas as the brain's me center. They're responsible for our internal monologue, our sense of who we are, our personal story. So when we get nostalgic, this part of the brain just lights up, because the memory isn't just some random event, it's an event that defines us.
And the research confirms this perfectly. As this quote from Yang and colleagues puts it, the central and defining character of nostalgia is the self. It's not complicated, really. Nostalgia is basically the highlight reel of your own life, and you're the star.
Okay, so if the first component is the who of the story, the second one is the what of the memory. And this brings us to autobiographical memory.
The key player here is the hippocampus. Think of it as the brain's master archivist. It's the part that retrieves these really detailed personal files from our past. And hey, notice the overlap on this slide? The MPFC, our me center, is active again. This shows just how tightly our memories and our identity are woven together. Nostalgic memories aren't just facts. They are vivid, emotional, and personally significant chapters of our life story. All right, the third piece of this puzzle explains the feeling itself. This is all about emotion regulation. Brain regions like the anterior cingulate cortex act kind of like an emotional filter. They work to reframe the past in this, well, rose-colored light, smoothing out the rough edges and really emphasizing the good stuff. This is the neurochemical magic that allows nostalgia to fight back against feelings of loneliness or stress or boredom in the present. It's not just remembering, it's remembering better.
And that leads us to the final and maybe the most important component, which answers why we actually seek it out: the reward.
When we experience nostalgia, the brain's reward network just lights up. Key areas like the striatum release a flood of dopamine. And get this is the exact same system that's activated by things we find deeply pleasurable, like incredible food, or moving music, or seeing someone you love. So, when you're savoring a nostalgic memory, your brain is literally rewarding you with a dose of pleasure and comfort. So, the huge takeaway is, what is all this complex brain activity, this whole dance between self, memory, emotion, and reward? What does it actually do for us? Well, it turns nostalgia into an incredible psychological resource.
And this visual just illustrates the outcome perfectly. While the original definition points to pain, and we call it bittersweet, research confirms that nostalgia is overwhelmingly a positive emotion. It's got way more positive feelings than negative ones. That little bitter part is just a tiny piece of a much, much sweeter whole. And that emotional complexity is what turns out to be so good for us.
So this positive experience translates into real tangible benefits. First, it boosts our mood and dials down stress, giving us comfort and security. Second, because our nostalgic memories are so often filled with loved ones, it strengthens our sense of social connection and belonging. Third, by reminding us of significant moments, it reinforces a sense of meaning and continuity in our lives. And finally, and this is the cool part, by reflecting on how far we've come, it can actually inspire optimism and personal growth for the future.
And this brings us to our final section: how to use this powerful tool wisely. Because, like any powerful emotion, it is all about finding the right balance.
So on one hand, you have its incredible positive potential for comfort, connection, and meaning. It's a healthy resource we can pull from. But on the other hand, there's a negative side. If we spend too much time in the past, it can become a kind of escapism, and that can lead to feeling dissatisfied with our present life. The key, according to researchers, is to appreciate the past while staying fully engaged with the present and optimistic about what's ahead. And this leaves us with one last fascinating question to chew on. Nostalgia shows us that our memories aren't just passive recordings. They're active emotional resources that are constantly shaping our well-being right now and our outlook for the future. So the question isn't whether we should look back, but how. If these memories are the building blocks of our identity, how can we best use them to build a meaningful life today?